All right, beginning part 2. Let's do iron. All right, so 19th century iron technology. Crystal Palace in London, which was built as an exposition, it was an exhibition space. Um, it looks like a giant greenhouse, and the idea of this, the ability to build large, relatively lightweight sculpture, I'll start that again. The ability to build large-scale, relatively lightweight structures, such as the Crystal Palace, was celebrated in the 19th century. It eventually leads to building the kinds of buildings we have today. And initially, buildings like this would have been considered appropriate for experimental purposes or for this kind of a space. You wouldn't build this like you wouldn't build serious architecture like this, not yet. So here's a view, early photograph of the interior of it. You can see how large it is, the tree growing inside. So here's a prefabricated section being lifted into place as an illustration of it being built. So this is really, prefabrication allows you to build these structures without having to, try to just stack it on one piece on top of another. All right, so there. So exhibitions of industrial arts, innovations, international expositions like this, where they would have, examples from, oopsie. Someone's got a microphone on. Good. Oopsie, no, I'm not doing that. So this is an exhibition of medieval, like Gothic revival, really examples of Gothic revival products. Again, here's that same, we saw that table. So in France, there is work going on with cast iron. Actually, a lot of very important work that goes on, that was done with iron happened in France, especially in Paris. So here, this Saint Genevieve Library. So you can see this neoclassical ornament, and on the inside, you have this like barrel vaulted ceiling, but there is this iron structure, and the ornament is inventive. It's really like kind of a new. This is kind of a new thing, kind of this organic, almost like it is like rinso, which comes from the Greeks and the Romans, but it's original. You can see the capitals of these iron columns are Corinthian, and it has a Gothic. Is that a pointed arch or no? Those are circular arches.
In that picture, though, it kind of looked like a flying buttress almost,
Yeah,
or as if it would end in a that Gothic pointed
yeah,
vault. Yeah.
yeah. This is helps to see. This is a little bit more, a little more Roman. And here, the National Library. Now, this uh, reminds me of this, which is these um, fan vaults that are from England from the 13th century, where this just kind of, actually, this is sort of almost like, almost, yeah, like pendentive, like you could make the little dome on the top and then opening, but it's really interesting work done with using iron, like using metal as a structure, and you know, becoming very inventive with how they use it. This upper floor is not as interesting, but still a lot of metal being used there. Looks a little bit like it's a prison. Here, the Paris Opera. This is an example. So, Beaux-Arts style of architecture is usually applied to this like a classical, like a neoclassicism of the 19th century, but it's applied to these buildings that are these like large public buildings or opera houses, and they're these very like um, large scale, grand, um, you know, um, almost like a showplace in a way. Um, Libraries, like in uh, France, Europe, France, England, and the U.S. Libraries were done with this like Beaux-Arts style, government buildings, um, banks. Um, so it's really the like a you know neoclassicism in a way. Right. So here, let's go back to that. Don't touch the mouse. So some of these buildings that were really meant like as open air markets, um, like I've been, there's one in Detroit called Eastern Market that's not like it's not this vast or this impressive, but it's a similar idea. Like a lot of cities have a central market. I've been to the central market in Athens where every day they have produce, live, like they have um, fish, pork, beef, chickens, fish, just like, lots of stuff that's like, it is fresh that day. Smelly. But this, a lot of these like big open air places, these places that were meant, they're really not meant to be permanent. I guess they weren't, this is why this is, probably not in very good shape when it was destroyed in 1964, or it didn't serve the needs of the contemporary French society in 1964. It's too bad to see places like this get, demolished because it's it's historical. All right, so this guy was an engineer, Eugène Emmanuel Viollet-le-Duc. He designed this, the spire that was added to Notre Dame in the 19th century, which is gone now because the roof burned and that thing melted and fell down. Well, it didn't really melt, it just like collapsed because it was too heavy for the fire damaged the integrity of the roof. But that spire that was on Notre Dame was added in the 19th century. So here are some illustrations from his discourses on architecture where he is experimenting with using iron iron structure as a support to allow for creation of these bigger, like very large interior spaces, similar to what the Romans were doing with vaulting. You have like the arch, then the barrel vault, then the groin vault allowed for these bigger and bigger interior spaces to be built. This is like a more like a 19th century equivalent. Now this here shows how they're set in the ground, and that this demonstrates that the exterior wall does not need to be what's holding up the building. What's holding up the building is what's inside it. So really this is kind of like this big heavy strut holding the whole thing up.
It looks very graceful though, because
It does.
it's either iron or steel.
Yeah.
There's no need to put all the masonry or the timber to, hold the heavy walls and ceiling. It looks very, um, yeah, very light and very graceful.
Yeah.
This and the Crystal Palace and those other industrial,
Yeah.
like novelty buildings.
Yeah. People originally these were meant to just be utilitarian, but eventually people started to see this as having its own beauty.
Yeah, because in the beginning they thought of it as a monstrosity.
Yeah, it was not. They were not considered to be nice places, but designers and architects and artists come along and they see the beauty in it. This is very graceful. You're right. And now this detail, this like wrought iron or cast iron could be made just as beautiful as anything else. That is impressive. You can see the little specks down there. Those are people. And here, the foot of one of these arch supports. That's big. So this allows for this enormous interior span to be created. So now we have stadium architecture, like indoor stadium architecture, thanks to people like Leduc. Or now Contamine and Duterre. But this, the scale of it is impressive. And this is like, you can't do this without industrialization. I really don't think so. And of course, Gustav Eiffel. Bridges. So he's an engineer and using iron to span these valleys. And of course, he designed the Eiffel Tower. Here's a photo of the Eiffel Tower at the Paris Exposition in 1889, for which it was built. This is an example. The Eiffel Tower was originally meant to be a temporary structure. It was meant as a demonstration of what the French could do in terms of engineering. And it ended up being, it ended up being liked so much that they left it there. Have any of you read the book Devil in the White City?
Yes.
So you know that you know about the Columbian Exposition in 1893 in Chicago.
Yes.
So what can you give us a little summary of what the Columbian Exposition was?
Well, from what I recall, the book itself was about the serial killer H.H. Holmes that was kind of operating at that same time.
Yes.
But the Chicago architects, I feel like it was Burnham and
Root.
yes, we're trying to showcase Chicago to be the premier destination for all things architectural, to beat Paris because they had just had the super successful exposition.
Yep. Good. Yeah, someone just wrote a text message or a little chat message here. Yes, he did. That was where, so the temporary buildings that Daniel Burnham built near U of C, that was the Columbian Exposition, which was in 1893. And we got, let's see here. Well, I'll show you that in a second. So the Columbian Exposition was in Chicago, and Chicago won the competition to try who would host the 1893 International Exposition. That was really where the entire world is watching, and it was a challenge to pull it off, but eventually they did. And so, in response to the Eiffel Tower, an engineer in Pittsburgh. Here's some examples of give you some idea of the scale of the Eiffel Tower. This is just one of the 4 feet. You see the base of it is big. Have any of you seen it? Have any of you been to Paris and seen this structure?
I have.
Yes.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah. And you can see just from this, the complexity of it. And here's cars that were at one time used to go up the side. Yeah. But here.
Wow. So wait, sir, when did that stop happening? I hadn't realized that.
I don't know. I think this might have been designed for the fair.
Okay.
Here this is a photo of the Columbian Exposition, which did, it was down on the south side near the University of Chicago, and those you see the passenger cars on the Ferris wheel are about the size of a CTA rail car. So it's very large, and the Americans saw the Eiffel Tower and they said, well, we're going to top it, and they built this gigantic Ferris wheel. So there was this, this industry and engineering. There was a sort of this, this enthusiasm to see what they could do with it. How big can we make things? How tall can we go? How weird can it be? And in some respects. And eventually it gives us buildings like this. This is a more modern building by the Spanish architect Santiago Calatrava, and it allowed all this stuff. All those the 19th century experiments allowed us to get to structures like this one, which is not necessarily easy, but paved the way. And well, I think I threw that in kind of as just as a goofy image. Eventually, we do get into the what is the era of the skyscraper. All right. Any questions about the iron technology? All right, let's talk about some arts and crafts. Just a moment, let me get this. All right, so we've seen some examples of industrialization, either in with large-scale structures or with chemistry, like in colorants, in lighting, and furniture production was also one where industrialization took the work away from individual furniture practitioners and made it turned it into a there we go. So factory production created, I guess you could say, less favorable conditions. The industrialization was, for someone like William Morris, was really considered to be immoral. They use a phrase that industrialization divides men, and he felt that there should be three rules applied. Actually, no, this is John Ruskin. Three rules should be applied to furniture. It should be made out of necessity. It should be practical, and you should not copy unless you are doing so for record keeping. And so the idea of revival styles was really antithetical to the the group led by William Morris and John Ruskin, who were they were trying to bring back a respect for craft, I guess you could say. So that is why it's called arts and crafts. So William Morris was Oxford educated, and he was heavily influenced by John Ruskin. And while they didn't seek to copy it, Gothic architecture to someone like Ruskin represented a positive collaboration of a community of craftspeople. And it's a bit, it's a bit idealistic to say so, but but the idea that a Gothic cathedral was built by a group of, like an architect, masons, carpenters, painters, sculptors, all working together to produce this one beautiful building. So, and the Gothic, this like idea of like the Gothic cathedral or was that's something that comes back in the 20th century with the modernists and the Bauhaus Institute, where they really think of it as it's sort of like it's like nostalgia that they will allow. All right. So let's get some. All right. So let's go to there. Yes, this is what we want here. Stop it. All right. So do you see anything Gothic on this building's facade?
Yes. The arches for sure.
The pointed arch. That's that is definitely there, and there's not really any ornament other than there's no ornament to speak of. There's some detail in the brickwork, but the pointed arch is definitely a message that it is a nod to Gothic. And this is the Red House. This is this is the Red House in Red House. This is the interior. So this is go in the front door, close the door, look back at the door, and that's what you're looking at. So the wallpaper is William Morris designed wallpaper, hand-painted door, and very, I guess, idiosyncratic, meaning it is individualistic and interesting. So here is the Red House entrance hall, the stairway looking toward the stairway. You can see these little pinnacles on the stairway, like rising up from the banister on the stairway. But it's pretty simple compared to 1859. Compared to Victorian interior, this is really clean and not at all using the same kind of ornament. There's definitely ornament in here. You can see this. He liked the acanthus leaf. That leaf is in the wallpaper is acanthus. But look at like the muted color in this, like rough, this like wood, like it looks like it's pine. Or some, that looks an awful lot like pine around the doorways. So the wood is fairly simple and, shellacked or lacquered so that it does not hide the grain of the wood. So still not without ornament or pattern, but much simpler. I really like the fireplace surround, I think, is very interesting with the brick. And large white surfaces to offset the patterned surfaces. And the upholstery and the carpets would all have been designed and manufactured by Morris. He didn't manufacture them himself, but he had, he had a company like Chippendale. He had his own storefront where he sold his manufactured interior furnishings. Here, going up the stairway. Very nice. So this is this you can see this respect for wood as a material, that it is, if you leave grain exposed like that, you're acknowledging that the grain is beautiful by itself. It doesn't need to be painted. It doesn't need to be gilded. It doesn't need to be carved. It's wood. It's beautiful just as it is. So there are wall paintings. So there's like really like mural painting, but this is the white. All that white is really almost a relief compared to some of the interiors we've seen. And I do like the little side chair that is a Morris designed side chair with his fabric upholstery on it. He employed that the sprung upholstery. You can see the deep, like there's button upholstery in some of this. There's the fireplace. And just an interesting brickwork, that where the brickwork is where you're getting ornament, and like here, like the exposing the end of the the end of the wooden joist on the ceiling also just creates a pattern in the structure. Later on, we'll see some Frank Lloyd Wright, and you can see there's some. Frank Lloyd Wright was aware of people like William Morris, and he was aware of what was happening in Europe. So here is Morris's storefront, 449 Oxford Street in London, 1877. So while the Victorian era rages, he's doing his own thing. Now, this is awfully decorative, but I do like his wallpaper. His wall coverings were something else. And the understated colors, color is really quite beautiful. And the chair next to the bed is a chair of his design. So you can see this medieval quality with these different types of leaf designs, where in some cases, well, I guess in the Middle Ages they were inventive with some of the classic stuff. Morris is also inventive with the classics. Block printed wallpaper. A few weeks ago, do you remember the video I showed you of William Morris wallpaper being printed?
Yes.
So here is some of it. Now that's nice, with the red and metallic. Okay, so May Morris was his daughter. She took over the management of his business, and so here, a threefold screen. So a woven silk damask. The damask means it's got a pattern on both sides. printed on cotton. So some of this is like woven, like this is a woven fabric used for upholstery. And so, he had the weaving and like the weaving done, sort of outsourced it, but at a place called Merton Abbey. And there's a tapestry being woven. So very similar to what we looked at that video of the weavers at Gobelin in Paris or outside of Paris that are still weaving tapestries. So he was, he wanted to maintain the old way of doing things because he felt it was superior. And in terms of quality, I think he's right. It makes things expensive to do it that way. I hope that people will always do things in these old methods that require a higher level of skill. I'm not completely opposed to mass production, but I don't think that mass production should make us forget where we come from. Everybody doesn't want the least expensive thing possible, because sometimes cheap is just cheap. So here's some other people working in the similar style, like in the same sort of spirit of arts and crafts. So it's like interest in nature, in the natural world, as opposed to the Victorian fantasy of industry. That's beautiful. I love that weird little bird too. And here is an advertisement for a page from, this is a page from the Morrison Company catalog from 1910. So simple, the Sussex chair with this these simple spindles, which is that turned, like the little turned structure, all those the structural pieces. It's modest, compared to a lot of Victorian stuff. This is very modest. It wouldn't cost you nearly as much money to buy it. Here is a 50s chair by Gio Ponti, which is related. This a adjustable chair, so you get some mechanisms in furniture. And I do like the upholstery. So this decorated wardrobe. Morris had a thing for using illustrations, and really this is custom embellishment on the surface, and taking something from Chaucer's Canterbury Tales that comes from the Middle Ages, and so it's meant to sort of emphasize his respect for the Middle Ages. This is from the Middle Ages, from the 15th century. That's William Morris. A stained glass window, so stained glass too. So this is starting to get a little bit later. There were different versions of arts and crafts. They would go back and forth between this relationship with industry. After a little while after Morris was, got things going, some people who were associated with arts and crafts decided that, maybe industry isn't so bad. And, then you get, then that is the aesthetic movement, which is, they rejected Morris's strictness. And so they started to bring in elements from Japanese design, Gothic, Queen Anne, kind of like spindly black, sometimes gilded. But then that kind of faded a little bit, and then you get this sort of like resurgence of some more like this more orthodox arts and crafts. So you get stuff with like Ashby, with this this guild of handicraft came back and said, no, that's wrong. We should make things by hand. So very beautiful. And these two, this like beaten copper candlesticks. All right, yeah, see there. Compare this and this dining room. I guess this is a library. So this, interesting to compare the excess of the sort of like the maybe what you could say is typical Victorian with the restraint of William Morris. This was in Chicago, the Potter Palmer House, demolished in 1950. Thank God. Well, not really, but. All right, so Eastlake was a, this like, hints on household taste, was more like it was mass-produced furniture in the 19th century. So it had elements of, it was like, so like the mass-produced, simpler because it was being mass-produced and sold to, people who needed to be able to, buy something they could afford, which has, it's it's almost like it had a relationship with arts and crafts. William Morris, it's not William Morris approved. Actually, no, you know what? I was wrong. In Ashby's view, industry and craft can coexist. So Ashby was one of the people who were decided that you want craft, but you also have to be able to mass produce it, which is also similar to the attitude of someone like Frank Lloyd Wright. Okay. So Eastlake furniture, mass-produced, low-cost furniture, lower cost. This, oddly modern, I still can't figure this guy out. This looks like it was made in the 1980s. Looks like some postmodern furniture. So William Watt, good job. And here, this here in this house in the Gamble House by Green and Green in Pasadena, California. This is like American arts and crafts. You might, sometimes like, mission style or mission style is sometimes applied to stuff that looks like this. But this is, you can see Japanese elements in it. In the way that doorway is designed. But you can definitely see arts and crafts elements in it too. This, embracing the beauty of wood is important. There's a lot going on with all the wood in there too. And I guess it has that in common with with Victorian, is that a lot of fussy details in some places. But you can see this, like, where this, like, this lamp is just like the detail around here, and like this, this didn't really need to even be there, that all those, like, that interesting detail where the lamp is attached to the wood. But, like, here you also see, like, what looks like an exposed joint, which in, like, there, an exposed joint. It's kind of a thing in woodworking that if the joinery, so like, like a mortise and tenon joint or a dovetail joint, there's a thing in woodworking to leave the joints exposed so that people can see people can see the beauty of the joinery. And it's a good challenge, because if your joints are sloppy, you don't want anyone to see them. So they have to look good. So there's, like, a house like this, there's a high level of craft that goes into building it. And one of the challenges with building new kinds of architecture is finding people who can build it. And, that's true of buildings today. You have, like, someone who's an engineer who can come up with something really spectacular. Every construction company is not going to be able to build it. And Frank Lloyd Wright ran into that. I'm sure Green and Green had the same thing. You got to find someone who's really good so that they will execute your design as beautifully as you expect it to be. Frank Lloyd Wright was known for hanging around the construction sites some of his architecture, particularly the residential architecture, and harassing the construction. They would harass the guys building it to make sure that they were doing it the way he designed it, because the way he designed it was challenging, and people would cut corners, people would leave things out, and he would go there and he would bust them. And they hated him. Some contractors would see Frank Lloyd Wright's name on plans when talking to a client and say, no thanks. That little tyrant is going to be at the job site every day. But it's his building, do it, I'm in agreement with Mr. Wright about that.
I suppose the downside of mass production and innovation, that crafts are not going to be anymore. It's not much.
I can't hear you very well, Alina.
All right, hold on a second.
Is it better?
Yes.
Oh, I had to plug in my my earphone. I just wanted to say that I suppose that's the downside of industrialization and mass production and things like that. That the craftsman does not exist anymore because everything is done with the machine. Um, and when you run into a person like Frank Lloyd Wright and others who were meticulous and created really unique things, um, you he would run into a problem finding skilled labor to do that.
Agreed. Yes, and that is a problem. That was a problem that that John Ruskin and William Morris identified and they were working against this idea that the quality is industrialization was really killing the quality of things that we're making. And to them, it was really alarming, and it was it was harmful to people because it changed. It made work worse for a lot of crafts. A lot of the men making things. Mostly it was men. There were women doing it too, but not very many. Not like not the construction work. Women were still shut out of a lot of this work. We will talk. We'll talk about Eileen Gray, who was She was skilled at lacquering, and she also became a tremendous furniture designer in the 19th century or in the 20th century. But yeah, that's it's a challenge. Even today, if you're hiring somebody to do work, it's hard to find good people because doing good work is difficult.
And expensive.
What's that?
And expensive too.
And expensive. Yes, you have to pay. You do have to pay for good work. So you may know the name Stickley with furniture. So Stickley comes from this era, which is sort of like this late American arts and crafts. And really, this the uniform quality of the wood and like the base of this table. It has place. It has storage in it, but it's this is not always the most graceful thing, but still quite beautiful. And like their use of art glass for the chandelier and the it looks like it's on the cabinetry. That's something we'll see more with Frank Lloyd Wright. All right, that's that. Let's see here. Okay. Now, so I'm going to wrap up more grading this weekend, and next week I'm going to give you another quiz, and that quiz will go back to neoclassical. I want to have it that I want you to be tested on some Chippendale, a little bit of the neoclassic, like like that neoclassical, but not too much. And then we'll get into some of I'll test you on some of this 19th century information so far. Next week I'll talk about Art Nouveau. We'll talk about show you some early Frank Lloyd Wright. and we'll get into the 20th century. All right?
Thanks, Duffy.
Okay, have a good day.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.